Alrighty, so in this video I'm going to show you how to install the heated seats. This is the relay that you're going to need. There's your part number, Alpha 451-820-0085. You can get this directly from Smart. It's a genuine part from Mercedes. There's the part number again. That's what the relay looks like. You're going to need this in order to wire the heated seats. Now, even though my vehicle has this right now, I actually installed this myself. As you can see, they don't work. So you're going to pull back up on this on two sides. Careful not to separate this. And basically you're gonna have to buy one of these as well as the relay. But yeah, it's currently hooked up. Basically what you want to do is you want to push in this little white area right there, little clip. Brown comes off, this comes off. You're gonna need this later. But basically on this clip here, this mechanism, the tiny little tab right there, that white little tab. What you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to push that tiny little tab, and we're also going to be pulling out the wires. Now over here on the wires, let me get you closer. So on the wire connector itself, on the top left you can see a 1, on the top right you can see a 9. So these are pinned. And over here you can see 10 on the top right and 18 on the top left. So pins 1 through 9, which is the top row, you're going to need pins, I believe, 4, 5, 6, and 7. As you can see here on the paper, you're going to need, if you're going to be using just the relay, you're going to need pins 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's what we're going to do. And as you can see here, we have those wires. So what we're going to end up doing with this is we're going to end up clipping the wires here, and we're going to splice them directly into our relay. The next step is I took a simple label maker. You can do this with Scotch tape or whatever, but you want to label the 4 pins. 4, 5, 6, and 7, and this little gap in between them is where I'm going to be cutting them. And the reason for 2 is if you ever want to reverse this or you ever get confused about anything, you can always refer to this and reconnect it exactly where it was. So even though it's color coded, this will just make it easier for you or anyone else in the future to be able to reconnect it should anyone ever want to reverse what you're doing here. So want to just label them. So the 4 pin connectors that are going back to the vehicle harness, you just want to fold the wire over and just put a bit of heat shrink on it. That'll protect those connectors and they will never short anywhere. And these are the ones that we're going to use to wire into our relay. The next step is going to be to solder the connections together, or whatever method you prefer. I'm going to solder everything. Now once we've soldered these and protected the pins, what I'm going to do is I'm going to label them on this end. So when I'm plugging into the relay, I know which pin from this connector here that they correspond from. And also, after I number them, this entire wire harness is going to get pushed down there through this hole and out of this area. And in order for me and other people to know what this is for, I've also printed a label that says 2 heated seat control switch. So I know that this harness goes directly to our heated seat control unit switch, which is this guy right here. So before shoving the harness down there, I decided to put some of this fabric tape just to make it look more of like a factory harness. Now we got them all pinned out. We know which pins, these numbers correspond to these pins. Now we can shove everything through, reconnect the switch here, and we're going to shove this down there and it's going to pop out over here. But prior to doing that, what we're going to do is we're going to actually pin up the relay right here, and we're going to test everything right here before we shove everything through. Now this is an extra step and it might look a little complicated, but let me explain. This tab right here explains that this harness goes to the heated seat control switch, which is up here. And a single wire, for example, this one shows that this is pin 4 from there. That is going to connect to pin 8 on the relay, which you can see the numbers there. So it's pretty simple. It shows like pin 6 right here, for example. This pin 6 will connect to pin 9 on the relay. This pin 7 right here, it says pin 7 right there, connects to pin 6 on the relay. And the way you know that is right here. So this is your switch connector, which is going to be here, and it shows you which wires. Pin 4 on the switch connector will connect to pin 8 on the heated seat relay. Pin 5 on the switch connector will connect to pin 1 on the relay. Pin 6 on the switch connector will connect to pin 9 on the relay, and pin 7 on the switch connector will connect to pin 6 on the heated seat relay. That's how it's gonna be working. Next, we're going to tackle this N11-34 cable, which is going to connect to pin 4 on the relay, and it's down there. So let's get to it. So under the left side of the vehicle, you'll have the fuse box. You want to pull this tab down here. You will release it, and then you want to push back and out. This will pop down. And what you want is this 4th wire right here. This one, the black with the gray stripe. So this is the one that we're going to tap into. So as you can see, I've tapped into the N11-3, which is pin number 4 on this connector here. And I have a 14 gauge cable, which is going to give 12 volts positive when the key ignition is turned on, and that's going to go to the relay. So now I've dragged all of it down. I've reconnected this, and I'm going to go ahead and gently push this guy back in. As you can see, some functions still work. So I'm just going to pop this guy back into its place. That's it. Okay, so at this point, earlier we got the N11-3 to pin 4, which is plugged in. And then I got the R9 to pin 7, that cable, which goes off of the R9 fuse, which is 25 amp. It's normally for the heated seat. And that's over here, plugged in, is to pin 7 as well, R9 to pin 7, you can see it right there. The next one is going to be a ground line, so we need a to pin 5, and it's going to be a chassis ground. And pin 5 should be right there. Yep, you can see that's pin 5 right there. So we're going to plug this one to pin 5. It's just going to run up here, and it's going to go to that ground point right there. So now that we have the chassis ground cable right here, it's all going, it's all plugged in. Theoretically, these last 2 pins are going to be going to the heated seat modules themselves. So this is what we've done so far. We have the 4 switch connector wires going to the relay. We have this ground right here going to pin 5. We have the R9 going to the relay. We have the N11-3 going to pin 4 of the relay. We got all that done. So it's about a week later. I had some problems. I figured them out. Basically, here's the factory harness where I clipped off the connectors. They look like this, that were for the original heated seat. And because we're doing a standalone wiring for it, this is going to take place of that. We're going to crimp these off to make sure that there's no connections to anything. But basically, some speaker wire. It's 14 gauge, so it's plenty thick enough. I don't know if you can't really focus on that. It's plenty thick enough, 14 gauge. So we're basically gonna, we cut this already to size, but what we're gonna do is you basically lie it down next to the harness. Since I'm gonna be running along the passenger side, it's gonna run up there. And because my relay is gonna be up here, I have quite a bit of extra wire there. So basically, this is just how you cut it. And for an idea, it's taller than me. It's like 6.5 feet. So if you want a general size, just cut about 6 feet of wire, and that should be enough for you to do this. But now I'm going to route it along this on both sides. Now that I have my connector connected to these wires, so I took one of these, I soldered it to the 14 gauge speaker wire, and now I'm using a fabric tape to make it look like it's a factory loom all the way down here. And then I will stop wrapping this and finish routing it over. This is what it should look like. The harness should look as factory as possible. And on the inside, where it's no longer covered, I put a label on there that says heated seats right. So I know that this cable is going to the heated seats right. Not necessarily for me, but anyone else, if I ever sell the car, they'll know what this random wire is, what it's doing popping out. At this point, I'm just gonna lift all of this up and drag the wire along there and up and out. So this is the update. So we have 2 ground wires hooked up here to the chassis ground. We have the R9 that's going to pin 7. What does it say here? R9 to pin 7, yes. So that we have the chassis lines there. We have the R9, we have the N11-3 to pin 4. All of it's coming out in one harness here. This additional new ground line, this is what we're going to be using to ground the 2 negatives on the 2 heated seats. So we have heated seat left, heated seat right. Right there is heated seats left. You got the positive, negative. You got the heated seats right, positive, negative. So this additional line that we made is going to ground these 2. It's going to go to the chassis over there. and all the other lines we've already talked about earlier. At this point, everything's ready to plug into the relay right here again and button everything up. So at this point, everything has been wired correctly. It's all plugged in. It's all working great. I had to redo some of the wiring here. So like I mentioned earlier, I've dedicated 2 separate 14 gauge speaker wires that are running to the heated seat elements themselves. But because everything's done, we can just basically take our element, we're gonna tuck it either up here somewhere and zip tie it like that, or if you wanna like shove it up there. I'm just looking around here and I see a gap here. There's a gap here that's available. I'm honestly just not completely sure. This might, yeah, that looks like a pretty well-to-do spot for it, but the problem is your acceleration pedal is right here, so I want to try to tuck all the wires out of there. I'm going to find a good spot and then I'll come back. Okay, so what I decided on is it's not even zip tied. I just chucked it up above this fabric here. I don't think it's going to make any noise, but if it does, I can always zip tie it to this massive harness here. But I'm just going to chuck it up like that. Tuck the actual wires out of the way. We're going to reinstall this piece and I'll come right back. So the way we ended up doing it all is it's all hidden up there. The actual relay is directly above this OBD2. It's just right there, that green box. That's our relay. The harness for it is right here. So everything's all set up. I have a multimeter hooked up to the positive on the terminal, and it's grounded to chassis over there. As you can see, it doesn't turn on, but when I turn the key to the on position, right, so you have ignition, you press the key, they turn on, and as you can see, now it's getting 11.74 volts. If I turn it off, it's getting nothing. But once I turn it on, there it is. It's getting the, well, the engine's off, so it's only getting 11 or so. When you start the engine, it'll go about to 12, 13 volts. But as you can see, both sides now work. They have 2 options, and everything works. That's how it's done. I hope you learned something today. I seriously hope this helped you out, and have yourself a nice day. Goodbye.